In October 1929, a 9-year-old boy made a pretty terrible mistake.
Oh, right, the comic book incident.
Yeah, exactly. So he was just desperate to fit in with his fourth-grade classmates, you know. They had started mocking him relentlessly because he collected Buck Rogers comic strips.
And kids at that age, I mean, they can be absolutely brutal.
Oh, completely. And the peer pressure just finally broke him. So he went home, he gathered up his prized, beloved comic collection, and he just tore it to shreds.
Just to prove he was, like, quote-unquote normal.
Right. But then a month later, that same 9-year-old boy realized he felt like he was, well, dying.
It's such a heavy thing for a kid to feel.
It is. He literally asked himself, who is killing me? What do I suffer from? And he managed to diagnose his own sickness. He realized he was dying because he had destroyed the thing he loved just to appease a crowd.
Which is wild. That realization is profoundly rare for a child. I mean, we've all abandoned something we cared about because society or our peers told us it wasn't cool, right?
Oh, for sure.
But very few of us actually recognize the internal psychological damage that kind of conformity causes until, much later in life.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our mission today. We are exploring a massive treasure trove of essays spanning 30 years by the legendary author Ray Bradbury. They're all collected in his book, Zen in the Art of Writing.
It's an incredible collection.
It really is.
Thank you.
And just to set the mood for you, as we record this deep dive, we are surrounded by a surreal blend of a vintage, neon-lit carnival, a shadowy, dust-filled attic, and above it all, the vast, star-filled night sky over Illinois.
It captures that quintessential Bradbury mix so perfectly. You've got that nostalgic Americana right up against the terrifying unknown.
Exactly. But I want to make this very clear up front for everyone listening. This deep dive is not just a how-to guide for aspiring authors.
No, not at all.
Whether you write code, manage a supply chain, prepare boardroom presentations, or just want to live a more engaged life, this is actually a manual for surviving reality.
Oh, okay, let's unpack this. I have to ask, is Bradbury arguing that creativity is just some childish coping mechanism, or is it like a fundamental survival tool for the adult world?
He treats it as a biological imperative.
Yeah.
I mean, Bradbury's core philosophy is uncompromising here. Creating is survival.
Survival. That's a strong word.
It is. He
Yeah.
deeply believed that if you don't engage in some form of creative expression or just honest work, you are literally allowing the poisons of the world to accumulate inside you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the daily grind, the tragedies, the constant rejections. If you don't process that reality through some kind of creative lens, you will sicken and lose your mind.
We tend to associate Bradbury with this kind of boyish, nostalgic wonder. But his reality, especially his early life, was incredibly dark.
It really was.
He notes in these essays that he lost an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, and 6 friends, all destroyed by car accidents. Just a staggering amount of sudden, violent grief to carry around, especially back then.
Right. And his response wasn't to shrink away or compartmentalize that trauma. He fought back against it creatively.
He did. And he describes this process using this fascinating medical metaphor. He called his daily writing habit a micro-arsenic dose.
Wait, a micro-arsenic dose?
Yeah. You deliberately swallow a tiny pinch of poison, meaning your work, your fears, your art, every single morning to build up an immunity.
Wait, like Mithridatism.
Right.
Like that ancient king Mithridates who was so paranoid about being assassinated that he drank tiny bits of poison every day so his body would become immune.
That is the exact historical concept he's invoking, but he's applying it to the human soul. You manipulate the beautiful, terrifying facts of your own existence to build a tolerance to the horrors that afflict us.
That is fascinating.
So if you administer that tiny dose of poison yourself through your work, then when the real massive tragedies of life hit you, you aren't completely destroyed. You actually have the resilience to survive until sunset.
He summarizes this in one of the most striking quotes of the entire collection, I think. He says, "Every morning I jump out of bed and step on a landmine. The landmine is me. After the explosion, I spend the rest of the day putting the pieces together."
It's brilliant.
You explode yourself on purpose, on your own terms, before the world can do it to you. That is a very violent but strangely optimistic way to approach the day.
Right, it's taking control of the chaos.
But I have to wonder about the sustainability of that. If you are stepping on an internal landmine every single morning, how do you keep that up without just completely burning out? Here's where it gets really interesting. Bradbury armed himself against that daily explosion with 2 words we rarely hear in professional environments anymore: zest and gusto.
Yeah, zest and gusto. He viewed those as the absolute most important items in any creator's makeup.
Really, not discipline or talent.
No, Zest and gusto. If you are approaching your work without fun, without love, without excitement, he says you are operating as half a person. You are probably too busy watching the market, worrying about what the critics think, or trying to anticipate what your boss wants to hear.
So true. And he fueled his own output with two very raw, unfiltered emotions: pure love and pure indignation.
The love aspect is so great.
It is. On the love side, he once wrote a story simply about a pair of ordinary tennis shoes.
Just shoes.
Just shoes. Because to a kid, those shoes held the magical kinetic energy of antelopes and gazelles bounding across the African veldt. He didn't overthink it at all. He just loved the shoes.
But then you have indignation, which is an equally powerful fuel and perhaps even more useful when you are feeling blocked or complacent.
The indignation stories are just incredible.
Oh, they're the best.
Picture this. You're going to love this. Bradbury is sitting in a dentist's waiting room, casually flipping through an issue of Harper's Bazaar magazine. And he comes across a fashion spread that just absolutely infuriates him.
Right, the Puerto Rico shoot.
Yeah. The photographers had gone to a back street in Puerto Rico and literally used starved, impoverished locals as background props for their wealthy, emaciated fashion models to pose in front of.
The sheer arrogance and cruelty of using human suffering as an aesthetic backdrop, it just sent him into a rage.
So he runs home, slams his hands onto his typewriter, and writes a story called Sun and Shadow.
Which is amazing.
It's about an old Puerto Rican man who decides to ruin a fashion photographer's shoot by sneaking into the background of every single picture and, well, dropping his pants.
It is a brilliant, hilarious act of rebellion, and it was born entirely out of sudden anger.
He did the exact same thing with his famous story, The Pedestrian. He wrote a sci-fi piece about a dystopian future where a man is arrested for the crime of walking outside at night.
And that entire premise came about purely because he was irritated that the actual police kept stopping him in his Los Angeles neighborhood just for taking evening walks.
Huh. Just for walking.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Bradbury's is giving us a highly technical piece of advice wrapped in these funny anecdotes. It is a concept he calls the lesson from lizards.
The lesson from lizards. Run fast, stand still.
Exactly. Observe any lizard or survival creature in the wild. They dart, they freeze, they dart again. Applied to work, the faster you blurt out your ideas, the more swiftly you write or create or brainstorm, the more honest you are.
Because hesitation allows the conscious thought to creep in, right?
Yes. Delay invites the ego, the inner critic, and that desire to force a specific style.
I'm stuck on this lizard idea, though.
Okay, why?
Well, I understand it for writing a sci-fi story, but let's apply this to you, the listener.
Yeah.
If I'm a software engineer, or if I'm prepping a high-stakes boardroom presentation, and I just blurt things out at the speed of a lizard, I'm probably going to get fired. How does this actually work in a professional setting without producing total garbage?
Well, you are absolutely going to produce garbage at first, and he fully acknowledges that.
Okay.
But the goal of the lizard phase isn't perfection. It's capturing the raw truth or the core logic before your anxiety filters it all out. Bradbury uses this great weather report analogy to explain this dual process. Hot today, cool tomorrow.
Hot today, cool tomorrow. I like that.
Today, you burn the house down, you explode, you fly apart. You let the passion or the raw data drive you completely. So, if you are that software engineer, you write the messy, unoptimized code just to see if the core logic holds.
Yeah.
If you are making a presentation, you dump every wild idea onto the slides without formatting a single thing.
So explode today, edit tomorrow.
Precisely, because tomorrow you pour cold, critical water on the simmering coals, the editing, the refinement, the optimization that comes later, and it is a completely different cognitive process.
That makes a lot of sense.
It will probably be tedious anyway, so you might as well enjoy the explosive joy of the first draft today. Trying to edit while you create is honestly like trying to drive with the parking brake on.
That distinction between the creator and the editor is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
But, it actually took Bradbury a while to figure this out himself. Early in his career, in his early 20s, he wasn't doing this.
No, he was struggling.
Yeah, he was actively trying to sound like his idols, Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft.
Which resulted in what he called quadruple-layered mud pies.
Quadruple-layered mud pies.
Yeah, he was producing these stories that were heavy on archaic language and forced style, but they just sank without a trace because they lacked any authentic connection to his own experiences. They were engineered, not felt.
So to break out of that, he started doing something so simple, yet so strange.
Yeah.
He started making long lists of nouns.
Nouns.
Just titles, one after the other on a notepad. The lake.
Yeah.
The night. The crickets. The attic. the trap door.
He was trying to navigate through the minefields of imitation. By simply flinging these isolated words onto paper, he was bypassing his prefrontal cortex, the logical planning part of the brain that wanted to sound like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
He was trusting his subconscious to feed him what he actually cared about, rather than what he thought he should care about to be successful.
It operates almost like psychological breadcrumbs. He was leaving a trail for himself to follow into the dark, hidden parts of his own mind. And the results were immediate. At age 22, he looks at his list and picks a noun. The lake.
And that changed everything for him.
It really did. He sits down, and 2 hours later, he finds himself sitting in the sun with tears dripping off his nose and the hair on the back of his neck standing up. He had written this haunting hybrid story about love, time, and drowning. He sold it to Weird Tales for $20, and it fundamentally changed the trajectory of his life.
This raises an important question for you listening right now. What would be on your list of nouns?
That's a great question.
What are the specific, highly personal objects, fears, and loves that define your unique perspective? Because the mechanism at work here is that the noun acts as a trigger, allowing the subconscious fears and memories to do the heavy lifting for you.
Take another word from his list. Skeleton. He didn't start with a plot. He just looked at the word and let his brain make associations.
Right. He remembered drawing skeletons as a kid to scare his cousins. And he remembered this weird jazz tune called "Tain't No Sin" to take off your skin and dance around in your bones.
And then you add to that a completely mundane trip to the doctor.
Yeah.
He goes in with sore throat, touches his neck, and the doctor jokingly says, "Congratulations, you've discovered your larynx. That'll be $2."
Those completely disparate elements, childhood drawings, a jazz song, and the sudden physical awareness of his own anatomy, they all just merged into a brand new concept.
He realized no one had ever written a horror story about a man terrified of the gothic horror hiding inside his own flesh, his own skeleton.
It's brilliant. Or take the noun "the crowd." This one is genuinely chilling because it stems from that trauma we discussed earlier.
Oh, right, the car crash.
Yes. When he was 15, he ran out of a house after hearing a terrible crash. A car had hit a telephone pole and was split in half. He witnessed people dying right there on the pavement.
A horrific event that obviously left him in shock for months.
But years later, using this noun list technique, his brain accessed a peculiar detail about that night that his conscious mind had overlooked. The intersection where the crash happened was surrounded by empty factories and a graveyard. Yet, a crowd of onlookers had gathered almost instantly. Where did they come from?
His subconscious steps up and answers the question with a terrifying premise. What if it is always the same crowd?
So creepy.
Victims of past accidents, doomed to come back and gather at the scene of new accidents. He wrote that story in a single afternoon.
Because the truth was already filed away, just waiting to be accessed. Which brings us to his most lifelong terror. The noun on his list, the thing at the top of the stairs.
Oh, this one is so universally relatable. So growing up in Waukegan, Illinois, his childhood home only had one bathroom and it was upstairs. To get there at 3 a.m., he had to climb a completely unlit hallway.
The ultimate childhood nightmare.
Exactly. He was convinced there was a monster waiting for him in the dark. He would run up, blind, absolutely terrified to look until he got the light switched on. And he held on to that raw, primal terror from 1926 until he finally wrote the story in 1986.
60 years.
60 years of keeping that monster on ice.
That's incredible. And if you think about it, if you are managing a team that is stuck on a problem, what happens if you stop trying to force a logical solution and just have everyone write down a raw list of nouns associated with the project?
I like that.
You might bypass all that corporate jargon and discover the actual bottlenecks, the hidden anxieties, or the unexamined assumptions that are holding you back. Bradbury argues that this is how you bypass what is currently trendy in your industry and map your own undiscovered country.
But, to make a list like that,
Yeah.
your subconscious has to be stocked. You have to fill the well with enough material to actually draw from.
You do.
Bradbury called this process feeding the muse. Now, he didn't view the muse as some fragile Greek goddess playing a harp on a cloud.
No, the muse is simply his term for the subconscious. It basically operates like a massive invisible background server. Every sight, sound, smell, and texture you experience is filed away. But to keep that server running efficiently, To keep the muse healthy, you have to actively feed it a very specific diet.
And his recommended diet is wild. It goes completely against the idea of hyper-specialization that we see today. He says you should read poetry every single day.
Right. Not because it makes you sound fancy, but because it flexes sensory muscles you don't normally use. Poetry provides compressed metaphors that expand in your brain, kind of like those little Japanese paper flowers when you drop them in water.
He also advocated reading essays on entirely obscure topics, far outside your field of expertise. Because if you only consume what everyone else in your industry is consuming, you will only produce what everyone else is producing.
Exactly.
He literally found story ideas by reading Geriatrics magazine, the official journal of the American Geriatric Society. He also read a medical pamphlet from Abbott Laboratories called What's New, which published articles on epilepsy right alongside poems by William Carlos Williams. He just absorbed everything.
We are talking about the cognitive science of divergent thinking and pattern recognition here. When you feed your brain unrelated, highly specific data like geriatrics and poetry, you are giving your subconscious the building blocks to form novel connections. Two disparate nodes in the brain finally connect, and that is where true innovation happens.
What's amazing is his absolute refusal to be an intellectual snob about those building blocks.
What's fascinating here is his pride in that.
Yeah, he believed you must consume equal parts trash and treasure. He proudly admitted that his muse was grown out of a mulch of everything from Shakespeare and Michelangelo's Vatican ceilings all the way to the Prince Valiant comic strips, Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan.
The term mulch is so appropriate. It implies organic matter breaking down, mixing together, and creating a fertile soil for new growth.
He even sent away box tops from Foods Macaroni just to get a cheap ceramic statue of an African gorilla. And he treated that little plastic gorilla with the exact same reverence as classic Renaissance art.
I love that.
So what does this all mean? It means your originality isn't about being perfectly refined or having the most prestigious education. It's about being a messy, honest collection of everything you have ever loved.
And Bradbury points out that this isn't a phenomenon reserved for professional artists. Everyone accesses this poetic subconscious when they speak their truth.
The story about his father is the perfect example of that. Bradbury admits he and his dad weren't really great friends. His father was a practical, working-class guy, not a very eloquent man day to day.
Right, just a regular guy.
But occasionally Bradbury would ask him a highly specific question. He'd say, "Dad, tell me about running away to the wheat fields of Minnesota or the gold rush when you were 16.
And something shifted. It might take a few minutes, but once his father got his pipe going and settled into the memory, the cadence of his voice completely changed. The passion returned. The specific details of the dust, the boxcars, the weather, the truth flowed out of his subconscious, completely untouched by his daily practical persona. In those moments, a regular father became a poet.
Because the muse was suddenly there for him. He was speaking his truth with zest and gusto. And if you ever doubt that this raw, enthusiastic, unsnobbish approach to life and work is valid, just look at the validation Bradbury received from the highest echelons of the art world.
This story is incredible.
When he was just 33 years old, he wrote an article about this very philosophy that creative work requires putting flesh into it and enjoying it as a fascinating adventure, not treating it like heavy industry.
And in response to that article, he received a fan letter from Bernard Berenson.
Bernard Berenson.
Yes. At the time, Berenson was an 89-year-old, world-renowned art historian living in Italy. He was basically the ultimate authority on classical art. Berenson wrote that in his 89 years of life, it was the very first fan letter he had ever written to anyone. He praised a 33-year-old sci-fi writer for stating exactly what he believed, that art must be an act of joy.
That is the ultimate mic drop. The most esteemed classical art historian in the world telling the guy who writes about Martian Chronicles and ceramic macaroni gorillas, you've got it exactly right.
It proves that authenticity, enthusiasm, and a well-fed subconscious transcend genre, status, and industry.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about the incredible machinery of your own mind. According to Bradbury, there are 2 billion elements in the world, and no two people experience them in the exact same order or with the exact same emotional weight.
Everyone is entirely unique.
Your subconscious is an incredibly unique filing cabinet of experiences, traumas, and obscure loves. Whether you are prepping for that boardroom presentation, trying to debug a massive software problem, or just trying to live a more observant life, You have to feed your inner muse. You have to swallow your daily microdose of arsenic to build your resilience, attack your work with zest and gusto, embrace your absolute weirdest loves, and bravely face whatever thing is waiting at the top of your stairs.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I'd leave you with this final thought to mull over. We live in an age increasingly dominated by algorithms and artificial intelligence. These are systems that are constantly trying to predict our actions, categorize our tastes, and flatten human behavior into neat, easily digestible data points. But if you truly follow Bradbury's advice, you become mathematically impossible to predict. Perhaps the only true irreplaceable magic we have left is that messy, completely unprogrammable mulch of our own subconscious. That bizarre, singular combination of cheap ceramic gorillas, terrifying car crashes, and unlit childhood hallways. That is the engine of your originality, and it is the one thing that AI can never replicate.
Thank you for stepping into the carnival in the attic with us today. Keep making your list, keep feeding your muse, and we will see you on the next deep dive.